Hello and welcome to productlessons.com, a podcast series on YouTube channel where we talk to product leaders from all over the world and learn from them how they build and manage world-class software products. You may subscribe the channel to be notified for future episodes, and I can assure you that we have some exciting guests lined up in the coming weeks and months. And if you want audio only format for consumption, you can use it from SoundCloud. Link is in the description below. And I'm excited about my guest today. She's not a pure play product person, but I still wanted to get her. And if you remember, if you've been following all my podcasts and guests before, I occasionally bring somebody who is an expert on the softer aspects of product management. And her name is Maya Grossman. Maya is number one best-selling author of the book Invaluable. I have the book right in front of me. Master the 10
Yay.
skills. 10 skills you need to skyrocket your career. And she's a marketing executive, blogger, speaker, podcast host, and a career coach. During the day, she works with startups and Fortune 500 companies to help them build high-performing marketing teams, and spends the rest of her team time sharing career advice to empower young professionals to pursue the career of their dreams. Throughout her career, she was able to work for companies like Microsoft, Google. She has received 10 promotions in 15 years and strategically leveled up from individual contributor to a vice president. She realized that there were a few skills that made her an invaluable employee, and she thought she could teach others how to use them and build a fulfilling career. That's how the book was born, with 5 million views, and one book later, Invaluable is now a mindset practiced by thousands of people around the world. At least I am practicing it since I have read the book. I have read the book end to end and was so mighty impressed that I shouted out on top of my voice on social media. I bought a few copies. I gifted it to some of my colleagues. And the book is not a dry book. It's not a book with instructions and lessons. In fact, it is interspersed with very interesting stories, especially of how a certain surgeon failed them all for a continuous drive. We'll ask her about that, and how once Maya stopped a plane from taking off on time. So that was my favorite as well. Maya comes across as an interesting character. At the age of 18, she joined army in Israel, where she was born. So we'll hear all of that from her. So I'm thrilled to welcome Maya. Hi, Maya. Welcome to productlessons.com. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ravi, for that amazing introduction. And yeah, I'm doing well. Excited to be here with you and with everyone.
Yeah, so I'm excited too. As I was just telling you before we started our interview, and there is no exaggeration, because I felt that I was in need of the book, and I also felt that there were other people who did not even know that they were in need of the book. But ever since I have gifted them the book, they have written back to me that they are still in the early chapters and how much they are liking it. I have messages from them, and so I thought, yeah, it's a great book, and that's why I pursued you. In fact, I accidentally bumped onto your profile, and that's how I pursued you. And then I bought your book, and just things rolled one after another. I'm so glad we are talking. So, Maya, before we get into the thick of things, why don't we set up the context by learning a bit about your background and your interesting career journey?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you did a great job with giving the high level view and where I am today. But to be honest, I actually didn't start my career in marketing. I was a travel agent for almost 7 years. I just needed a job early on after I was discharged from the army. I needed a job to pay the bills. So I, took a job, and it was a really great company and nice people. And I was moving up the ladder, but I wasn't excited, and I wasn't, I couldn't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. And I was doing my bachelor's at the time, and I was majoring in financing and marketing. And I really, really hated finance, and I fell in love with marketing. And that was the first time that I started thinking strategically about my career. It was no longer a job. I wanted to choose what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that's where I actually started taking action towards that goal, because I had zero marketing experience. I mean, I had 7 years of experience as a travel agent, but that doesn't translate into marketing, not directly. So I really had to start thinking of ways to gain that experience and actually step into this world. And I think I did something similar every time I moved from one role to another. Because if you look at my background, it's not the traditional career ladder. I didn't, go from, manager to senior manager, director, and so forth. I moved from social media and PR to digital marketing into product marketing, and doing some demand in the middle, and then kind of settling on a broader leadership role that includes all of the above. And it's not the traditional career path, but I just followed my passion. And I worked really hard to prove myself every time I had to move from one role to another, to actually demonstrate that I can do the work that is expected of me to do. So that's kind of how I got to where I am. And as you mentioned, I'm doing some consulting now. So I love working with startups. It's my main focus. But every now and then, I actually help bigger companies, usually specific teams within those companies, to build their marketing from the ground up. And during that process, and generally in the last 10 years, I've been leading teams, which is something I love doing. And I keep, getting those questions from people, and whether they are my employees, people I mentor, they always want to know how to get to the next level. What do they need to do to be this high performer? And I kept giving them the same answers over and over again, until eventually I was like, wait a minute, maybe there's a better way to share this information at scale and help more people. And as you mentioned, this is how Invaluable was actually born. And I took the last year to write the book, to build a community on LinkedIn, so that when I actually launch the book, people know it exists.
Got it. So my when I wish I had read the book when I began my career, so that I could have applied it. I somehow feel, not just me, many people like me, that the first few years, because you are ill-informed, you do not know how to navigate your careers, you lose out on precious time, and then by the time you figure out, you know what you should have done, you have lost a few years. But it did not seem like it for your career. You were from the day one of your career, you knew where you had to head, and you were moving fast in your career trajectory. So how did that happen? Did you know the skills required to grow fast in your career, or did you have mentors? Did you have some sort of books that you were reading? What were your secrets then?
Yeah, well, I just told you, I wasted 7 years not planning my career, so I definitely didn't have it figured out from the get-go. But when I did, I basically had no choice. I mean, if I wanted to move from being a travel agent to a marketer, I had to learn how to do that. And at the time, no, I didn't have anyone to teach me. I didn't have any friends who were in marketing. No one at the company was doing marketing at the time. So I really had to figure it out on my own. So I did a lot of independent learning, just reading things online. I wanted to get into social media, so I launched a couple of profiles on Facebook and Twitter, and just started playing with them. And then I had this really weird idea. What if I can do social media for the travel agency? Now, there was no marketing role at the time, but I went to my manager and I convinced them that social media, Facebook in particular, is going to be huge. And mind you, this is like 2016, so Facebook basically just launched. And I told them, I'm going to do this on my spare time, and it's going to help the company. And to be honest, I think they had absolutely no idea what I was talking about, but they trusted me. I've been there for like 6 years, and they knew I wanted to help them. So they said, yeah, sure, no problem. And what ended up happening is I created and then managed their social media for them for 6 months. And I gained a ton of hands-on experience, even though there was no role open at the company. I just created it. And once I was able to do that, I realized, you know what? I can create my own opportunities. I don't need to wait for anyone to give it to me. I can figure out what it takes to get to the next level, and just do the work that's required to get there.
what is the source? What was the source of your hunger and drive to succeed? Was it to compensate for the first loss of 8 years, and then say no? Now I am on fast lane. What was your inherent motivations to go fast?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I've always been this overachiever type. Even in school, I always looked at everyone else's test scores because I wanted to be the best. And I think it comes from my father. He always told us not necessarily that we need to be the best, but that we can achieve anything that we want. So I grew up in an environment where everything was possible, and it made it a lot easier for me to want to reach the top in whatever it is that I was doing. It wasn't just, at work. And I guess it's just kind of my type A personality to have this drive. But I think for everyone listening, success is what you define as success. For some people, it's what I've done, to make it to the VP level. For others, success means spending more time with their family or helping more people. I have a cousin who is a kindergarten teacher, and she does amazing work with children. And she is so fulfilled and happy. So for her, that is success. And I think you just need to determine what success means to you and not follow someone else's guidelines.
That's amazing. Thank you for clarifying that, because otherwise it is a skewed notion of success. But thanks for clarifying that. To each his own, isn't it? So
Yep.
you have to define it. But tell me, did also your military experience early in your life, did it contribute to shaping, say, bringing in discipline and rigor into into your life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's a very unique experience. And as you mentioned, I was born and raised in Israel, where military service is actually mandatory. So at the age of 18, both men and women are enlisted, and we have to serve for a couple of years. And you kind of move from being in your parents' house, being all guarded, everything is taken care of, to this environment where you're basically all alone. You don't know anyone around you, and you need to figure out how to fend for yourself. But you also learn that you can't do it alone, that you're part of a team and a unit, and you need to be accountable for them, not just for yourself. So I think a lot of that early training and just being in that environment that forces you to take ownership, that forces you to show up and do as you say that you will do, because if you don't, there are consequences. I think it really helps shape your character.
Got it. I would like to ask you about extreme accountability that you mentioned in the book, but I would like to set the context with you helping us share the same experience that you mentioned in the book, where your surgeon failed you for not cleaning the common area. Maybe that would be nice to know.
Yeah, of course. So I started my way in the military in the Air Force, and I was sharing a dorm with about 100 other women. And every 2 weeks, we had an inspection. So the sergeant would come in and make sure that our dorms were actually spotless. And if we passed that inspection, we could go home to visit our family. And if we didn't, we were going to stay in the base for another 2 weeks. So obviously, we wanted to do well. And I think it was probably one of my first inspections where we all worked really hard. We made sure everything was spotless. The sergeant came in, they checked everything. They literally ran their finger through the window sill. I remember that because it was so crazy, to make sure that we didn't fake it. It was actually clean. And we were so relieved because it seemed like we did a great job. And then a couple of minutes later, we were all called into the yard, and we were told that we have miserably failed. Not because the rooms were not clean. All of the rooms were cleaned, but the common areas were not tended to. So, basically we each thought of our own dorms, but no one thought about kind of the overall good. So 100 people were, just so disappointed that we were not going to get to leave the base and go home. Luckily for us, we had a chance to fix that. But I think it was a great lesson in accountability. It's not just about yourself, especially in this type of setting, but also at work. If whether it's your direct reports, your team, or your colleagues, it's never just about you. So accountability, yeah, it means that you're going to show up and do what you said you will do, and you will aim to get the best results possible. But it doesn't just mean being accountable for yourself. It means being accountable to other people as well.
Got it. And you made a distinction between accountability and responsibility. I never knew the difference. I thought they were almost the same. But what's the difference between those two words?
Yeah, I think the best way to explain that is to give you an example. So especially, when I think about it in terms of a work environment, a responsible employee, will do as they're told. So if I tell one of my employees, hey, I need you to write a blog post and I need you to have it ready, within the next 3 days. 3 days later, I will have the blog post that I asked for. An accountable employee will take a look at my request and realize, you know what, it's the wrong topic. If we write about this, no one will read it. So they'll do the research, they'll figure out what we should write about, and they'll create a new blog post, and they'll do it within the time frame that I allotted them. Because for them, it's not just about following orders, it's about making sure that we get the best result possible. And I think that's the distinction.
Got it. So accountable is on a higher plane than just being responsible.
Yes.
Got it. You have a list of questions for self-inquiry to test if you have an employee mindset or owner mindset. I love the chapter there. And it says, do you adjust to fit the company's culture? So one of the questions is, do you adjust to fit into the company's culture, or do you define the culture through your actions? Could you explain this distinction?
Yeah, of course. I think we first need to establish what it means to have an owner's mindset. And I think some people, when they hear that, they immediately think, oh, it means that you want me to work 24/7 for the company. And that's actually not the case. So having an owner's mindset is more about having the ability to navigate between the short term and the long term, being able to see the details and the day-to-day work, but also knowing how to see the 30,000 foot view of the longer term and the company. So you don't just focus on your own job description, you think about the company's benefit as a whole. And I think if you have that mindset, when it comes to pretty much everything, but even culture, you're not going to be a yes man. So you're not going to fit into something if it doesn't work for you, or if you don't think it's for the benefit of the company. I mean, if you come in and the culture is great and it helps drive success, no problem. But if you come in and it doesn't feel right for you, then you will actually do the work necessary to change it. Not by telling people they're wrong, but by doing it the right way and leading by example.
Got it. Excellent. The next question is, what does going beyond the job description mean? A job description by its very nature describes your job, isn't it? So if you go beyond the boundaries, if you go beyond the boundaries, first of all, should you go beyond the boundaries of what is defined for you? Maybe you could explain that a bit.
Yeah, well, if I stayed within my job description, I wouldn't be where I am today. For every single role that I had, I always aspired to do more. Now, obviously, at the baseline, you actually have to do your job. But more often than not, a job description is more of a suggestion, because the person actually makes the role. Whether it's a new role or if you're stepping into someone else's shoes, you're going to have an opportunity to kind of shape it and make it your own. And I think after you settle in, after you get, the basic job done, you can start thinking about, okay, how else can I actually help this company? What else can I do, from where I am today, with the skills that I have, from everything that I learned, that is actually going to deliver better results. Or you can start thinking about it from your own perspective. Hey, in 6 months to a year, I actually want to move up the ladder. What am I missing right now? And once you start doing that, you're going to be able to either see opportunities or create them for yourself to deliver more value. At the end of the day, yes, you are, when you get started, you're a small cog in a big machine. But I like to think about it as if your job is not just your job description, your job is to help the company be successful, no matter how you do it. And there's definitely an art to doing that. You can't just, come out and do whatever you want. Obviously, there are some internal politics. You have a manager, you have a team, you have colleagues. So you definitely have to be tactful about it. But I don't really know a manager or a company where an employee says, I want to do more. Even if you don't pay me more, I just want to do more, and they'll say no. Most of the time, they'll actually embrace your desire to do a little bit more. And that's actually a great way to put yourself on the right path to getting that promotion, to getting that raise after you've proven your abilities.
Got it. I was very inspired by your story where you demonstrated this leading by example, where you actually made a mistake in booking an important client's not booking an important client's hotel booking or missing it. Maybe you can share that, because that is such an inspiring story. The way you handled it and the way you made a change of heart into your client's mind. So that would be a fantastic story to share.
Yeah, of course. So this actually happened during my time in the travel agency. And the story is that, I was working with business clients and I had to book a hotel for one of them for a big conference. And like with big conferences, a lot of things get mixed up. And my role was to double and triple check before the conference. And I forgot to do that. So by the time the client made it to the hotel, there was no booking. And this was at the time where the entire city was booked solid. So it was a huge mess, a really, really big problem. And that client called my manager and yelled for a really long time. And I just felt bad. I mean, 95% of the time, I knew exactly what I needed to do and I did it well. And just one time that I messed up, it became a huge, huge problem. And the travel agency that I worked for, they were known for their great service. And it's something that, I really admired. I thought it's something that I really believe in. So I tried to think, okay, if I was that client, how would I like to be treated? I mean, I could go to my manager and complain and say, oh, it's a stupid client, it's not my fault, blah, blah, blah. But I don't really have that victim mentality. My mind always goes to, okay, how can I fix it? How can I make it better? How can I move past this so, we move forward instead of going backwards? And what came to mind was, I have to personally apologize. And I wanted to do it in a way that was genuine, not just sending an email of like, hey, I made a mistake, sorry. So I actually got flowers, and I think we got a little voucher for breakfast. And I personally walked to his office. Luckily for me, it was just a couple of blocks away, knocked on this client's door, and came in and apologized. And I think just doing something that is so unconventional, this was almost 10 years ago, but even today, if you actually walk into someone's office in person, it's just, such a big shock. And I remember he was so impressed that he actually just sat down and spoke with me for about 30 minutes. He apologized for yelling, and he said, I totally get it. And eventually this client was actually a decision maker, and his company ended up retaining the travel agency for the long term, because the person who made a mistake took the time to actually apologize and make sure that it doesn't happen again.
That was such an amazing story, and very few people that I know of would go the extra mile to do something. And this actually transformed. It just made him forget the mistake, and in fact, he gave you more business than that. But how did that thought come into you? Because it takes a lot of resourcefulness and initiative to rectify something like that. So was it? Do you consulted somebody, or was it something that came within you?
I think I was being very selfish because I felt bad. I felt like I took it really personally that I did a bad job. I couldn't stand it. I had to be, the best employee, the best performer. So by fixing this problem, by making him, forgive me or like me, I would actually be helping myself. So I didn't see any other way. Obviously, taking it to that level, I think it had a lot to do with what I saw around me. So a lot of the executives and the managers I worked with, they were the type of people who, uh, you know, uh, took the extra step and always did a little bit more. Maybe not necessarily in compensation, but if they retained a new client, they will send them a gift. Or if someone needed something that was beyond our services, we'll figure out how to help them, even if we can do it ourselves. So it's just a mentality that kind of stuck with me. And I don't even think I asked for permission. I don't remember. I think I didn't even ask for permission. It wasn't like a huge amount of money. It was probably like $100 that I had to spend. And I just did it. And I figured, if my expenses will not be approved, then I'll just pay it. I don't care. I just had to make it right.
Got it. And this mentality of going the extra mile, not just for this in particular instance, but in every aspect of your work, isn't it? I mean, they,
Yeah.
they, they usually say go the extra mile because it is not crowded. So by doing this at all aspects of your life, that would be your competitive advantage, isn't it?
I believe so. One, because what you said is true. Most people don't actually bother doing that. And you can see from my example, it makes a huge impact. But it's also a great way to continue learning and growing. I mean, if you keep doing the exact same thing all the time, how are you going to get better? So for me, going the extra mile was never, about me doing hard work, but rather me moving towards my goals and actually, uh, becoming a better version of myself.
And that is so important, because why would anybody go the extra mile if he's not hungry for success, isn't it? So
Yeah.
that is the source of every initiative that you would want to do, because otherwise you can preach all of these lessons to all your readers who are reading this book, but the ones who would apply the lessons from this book are the ones who have to be hungry to succeed, first of all, isn't it? Otherwise,
Yeah, and they have to be ready to take action. Okay, I think we got so used to having everything happen immediately, and we want immediate gratification. But this is a long-term game. This is not about, getting what you want right now. It's about building your reputation and building your habits in a way that when you hit a certain point, everything is going to accelerate quickly. And I didn't necessarily knew that when I started, but I realized it very, very fast. And like I said, it's just kind of part of who I am. And I know not everyone, has the same upbringing. Not everyone has the same resources that I had, which is why I talk about it in the book. And I explain how to develop those mindsets. I explain how to actually get yourself from point A to point B, not just by thinking about it, but actually taking action.
thank you. The other message in your book that I really liked was train yourself to be unsatisfied with the status quo. Could you shed some more light on that?
Yeah, so that's actually part of the chapter about accountability. And training yourself not to be satisfied with the status quo is a way to not stay complacent and stay in place. And it goes back to what I just said. If you're not moving forward, you're not even standing in place. You're going backwards because everyone else are moving forward at an accelerated pace. So I really think it's important to, appreciate your achievements. Whenever you hit a goal, celebrate it, enjoy your win, but start asking yourself, okay, what's next? What else can we do? How can we improve it and make it to the next level? Because if you stop doing that, you're going to stop growing. And I think it's just such an important quality to have. You have to continue doing more.
Got it. So, since the primary audience of my podcast are product managers, and product managers by the very nature Nobody reports to them. It's a cross-functional role. They lead by influence and not by authority. So this is an important question, and many people who, as they progress in their in the ladder, they find it really tough to lead by influence. What are ways one can build influence in an organization?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. As someone who's been into product marketing, I know that it's quite similar. You know how product marketing is the intersection of marketing, sales, and product. So I definitely had to do my share of leading without authority. And I think it starts by understanding that, you're talking to people. They're not functions, they're actual people. So you need to take the time to get to know them on a personal level, not through work emails, not through an agenda, just to know who they are. And I try to do that early on. So if I join the company, I try to do that my first 30 days to actually have those conversations and, try to understand who people are before we get into the work relationship. I think it's very important to establish rapport. And that's obviously easier said than done, but one way to do that is to demonstrate to others that you're the kind of person who gets things done. And you can do that by getting a very quick win, especially if you just joined the company, if you're early on. If you can show people that, you don't just talk, you actually make things happen, I think more people will want to collaborate with you because they'll understand that, you're going to drive things forward. You're going to be a force for good, for change, not someone who just gives them extra work or asks them for their resources. So that's definitely something that I find really valuable. And I think you also need to show people that you're going to put their interests ahead of yours. And I think especially when it comes to, let's say, product marketing and sales, that's a really hard relationship to have because some of our KPIs are aligned, some of them are not. And unless you know people and unless you know what they're optimizing for, you'll never be able to help them. And I think putting others before you put yourself and leaving your ego at the door is probably the best way to actually build that relationship and gain influence. Not because you'll be serving them, but because you will actually do everything in your power to help them be successful. And most people I know will reciprocate when they see that. So just be the bigger person, be the first one to offer help, and then it will be much easier to ask for it.
Right. So can we go a little deeper on practical? You mentioned about the first 30 days. So if you have, usually when you join a new organization and you have this first 30 days in your mind and you know these people that are going to be your peers in other functions, so what do? You just go and have these coffee meetings with them and then tell them how can you be of help to them? How should those conversations be? Also, how much is likability factor important? Because you need to get things done and also be likable, because the first 30
Yeah.
days, because the first impressions are so important, isn't it? And many people lose out on that, and then it becomes difficult to pick it later. So all the hard work needs to be done in the first 30 to 45 days.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to fix a first impression. And, when I first got my VP role in a fintech startup, I thought, I was the highest authority. So I just waltzed in and I was like, hey, this is everything that you need to fix. Not the way to go. It didn't matter that I actually had the authority. If you don't get people to trust you, then you're never going to be able to get them to actually collaborate and work with you. So yeah, definitely get to know people on a personal level, but then take the time to actually understand their goals, their KPIs. And you should probably do the same with your manager, by the way. You always need to know what they're optimizing for so you can help them. And it's not necessarily going to be the same as your own KPIs, but when you know what other people are trying to achieve, it's going to be that much easier for you to figure out how you can help them. And it can be small things, right? I mean, I remember working with the product team, and I knew that they were testing out a couple of different types of software. So I just recommended a different software that I knew from my previous experience. That's a way to help them. I mean, it's tiny, but it means that you care enough to actually try and help. And I think doing that, so you're going to have an informal conversation just to get to know them, and then have more of a structured conversation to understand what they're aiming for, and even ask them during that conversation, what do you need from me? How can I help you be more successful? And when you have that information, it's going to be a lot easier when you are doing your day-to-day job to take that into account. So if you can do that early, that's a really great way to earn rapport.
Got it. And how do you nurture this relationship in the long term? Because usually, first impression, sometimes you work hard and you build that. How do you nurture it long term? Like, should you take turns on having lunches with these cross-functional people? And these questions might sound silly, but these are real problems. Many people do not know how to build relationships.
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, some people you probably work with on almost a daily basis. So maybe with these people, you're going to have a closer relationship. With everyone that's a little bit more remote, yeah, try and have, coffee every now and then, or lunch. But you can also just, like I said before, keep them in mind, and every time that you have something to share, you can share with them. Even if you saw just a great article that is somehow relevant to your product, you can share it with them. And you don't need to do it every week. You can do it every couple of months. I know some people really turn it into an art, and they have like a mini CRM for all the stakeholders that they want to manage. I'm going to be very honest, I never had that. I really just, kept it small. So I didn't try and impress like 50 people. I try to have like 10 to 15 people in my circle that I constantly check up on and keep in mind, and just try to keep them involved in what I was doing. I think a lot of people forget that sometimes just saying thank you or telling someone they did a great job goes a long way. Even if you are not part of their project, but there was an all hands meeting, or there was a company email that talked about what they achieved, go and say congratulations. Go and ask them, how was the process like? What did you learn from it? Just be interested. And this goes back to, you don't have to be best friends, but just be a human being. Just be their friend, at work, and care enough to ask them the right questions.
Right. So somebody who rises fast in an organization, and you are an example of that. How much is the softer skills, the aspects that we're talking about, important than the functional skills? And was that your strength as well in climbing up the ladder?
I think so. I mean, if you read the book, you know that I believe soft skills are probably the best way to grow your career. And it's also a great way to future-proof your career, because if I'm being honest, the pace in which jobs and careers change these days is insane. By the time you graduate from college, everything you learned is probably going to be obsolete. And you may get into a role, and 6 months into it there's a reorg and everything changes. So yes, you still need a profession, you still need to know some of the hard skills for sure, but I think having the right mindset and being able to deliver great results in any profession relies on soft skills. And if I look back at my career, I would say people who started the same level that I didn't necessarily make it, to the same level that I am today, not because they don't have the capability. They're all great people. It's because they just didn't have the mindset to drive them forward.
Got it. Excellent. My next question is very important, and this is the relationship that you build with your immediate boss. And I have seen with my short career experience that not all relationships have been great with people. So when they are hired, it is, of course, the rapport is high because there is hope on either side. That's why both of them decided to work together. But some people are great at building rapport with their bosses, and they succeed, and then some people it just breaks down. So
Yeah.
what are some of your tactics to ensure that you start on the right footing when you build that relationship and make it work and effective?
Yeah, well, your relationship with your manager is probably one of the most important relationships in your life. If you kind of look at the numbers, at least for me, I spent more time with my manager than with my husband or my family in different periods in my career. So first and foremost, I think you want to be friends. And again, you don't have to be the best of friends. You don't have to go out for beer every weekend. You just need to respect each other and like each other and know each other on a personal level. And that's actually really important because there are a lot of subtle cues that your manager can give you. Just when you know someone very well, you start really anticipating their needs. And that's one of the best things you can do for your manager. If you can anticipate their needs and do things for them before they actually ask for it, you're going to get into the employee hall of fame, trust me. And I know that because as a manager, these were the employees that really were able to build a great relationship with me, because it meant, one, they knew me, they knew what I was optimizing for, and they try to help me do my job better. If I need to micromanage, if I need to tell someone 5 times to do something, if I need to, stalk them to make sure that they actually get the job done, that creates more stress for me. That creates more work for me. And it's just the worst way to start a relationship with your manager. So get to know them, learn what their goals are, and do everything in your power to help them achieve their goals and anticipate their needs. Even, you know what, even if it means getting them coffee because you saw them working 12 hours straight because there's a crazy deadline and you just want to be nice. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Because again, if you build that relationship and friendship, they will actually do the same for you. My boss would bring coffee for me as well when I had a terrible day.
Got it. And how do you so when you join a new organization and you are meeting with your boss for the first time and you're trying to schedule your one-on-ones and stuff like that, you have a so your opinion is you should actively proactively take charge of the agenda of your one-on-ones, isn't it? Maybe you can shed some light there
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, of course. This actually started from a story. So when I joined Microsoft, my first day, my manager left for a 3-week vacation. And he was very, very kind. He came into the office for 2 hours just to welcome me. And then he left to be with his family for 3 weeks. This was a completely new role. No one has done this role before. There was no documentation about it. So I was basically left to figure out what to do. And if you work for a company the size of Microsoft, you know that you can spend a lot of time onboarding and just getting to know everyone, because it's kind of okay to take the time to ramp up. But I was very impatient. I didn't want to wait for 3 weeks. So I started working. I started interviewing everyone who was on my team. I started asking questions. I started reading books. I just tried to gather all the information I could to figure out what my role is actually going to look like. And I put together a plan, super simple, nothing fancy, literally one Word document that said, here are the 5 things I think I should focus on based on my research. And when my manager got back, I set up a meeting with them and showed them, here's my research, here's what I think I need to do for the next 3 months. What do you think? And just imagine how different that is than, if you're a manager, than having to set up a one-on-one and then hear your employee say, well, I'm new here, so tell me what you want me to do.
Got it. Got it. Thank you so much. So one of the skills you advocate in the book is to become a lifelong learner. That's why we go to college to learn, and then we apply the lessons to in our career. What does lifelong learning mean?
Yeah, I think there's research that shows that I think more than 70% of people will never pick up a book after they graduate from high school, which is insane in my mind. When we're young, when we're in that system, when we're in college, we have someone to tell us that we need to learn. We have goals about learning. And when you make it into the real world, there's no one there to tell you that you should continue learning. There's no one to tell you what you should be focusing on. And let's be honest, it's hard. We have, our life and our family, and we have a job. Who has time to actually think about learning? But the only way to actually move forward is to continuously educate yourself. I mean, not even just in the tech world, everywhere today, progress is happening at an unbelievable pace. And if you don't not only stay up to date, if you're not ahead of the curve, you're going to be left behind. So I think continuously educating yourself and finding ways to learn more about your industry, to learn more about your profession, and just expand your horizons. I think that's a really, really good way to set yourself apart. Because here's the thing, the way our brain works, the more information we put in, the more we're able to put out. It's kind of like a database. And we don't necessarily feel that, we have all that information inside. But every now and then, when we have this little search query going on in our head, our brain has more information to choose from. So it's really, really important to continue learning.
Excellent. You also mentioned that one of the ways to grow in an organization is to proactively ask for opportunities. Maybe if you could also shed some light there.
Yeah, I think unfortunately a lot of people think doing their job means, going to the office 9 to 5 and waiting for someone to notice them, waiting for their manager to recognize them. They just wait for something to happen. But unfortunately, waiting is not a strategy. And especially in the competitive world we live in today, if you're not actively seeking opportunities, the chances of you finding them is very slim. And what it means to create opportunities for yourself is to, one, have a goal. If you don't have a career goal, if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, you'll never see opportunities because you'll never even consider the possibility of doing something, different. So you need to start with having a goal. Now, if you have a goal, let's say you want a promotion or you want to move into a different role, then you're going to be able to actually ask yourself, okay, what does it take? Where am I today? Where am I trying to go? And what is it going to take? Once you figure out what it's going to take, all you need to do is find ways to gain the skill or the experience that you're missing. And you can do that within the organization you're working for right now by taking extra responsibilities, by initiating, a project, even volunteering internally. I know a lot of people who said, I really need leadership experience, but my manager doesn't have the head count. I'm not going to be a manager in the next year. So how can I gain this experience? And my answer is very simple: volunteer. Find someone within that organization that is a little bit more junior than you and help them out. That's what a manager does, basically. So if you have a goal in mind, you're going to be able to find opportunities to gain that experience and the skill that you need. But it really starts by actually asking yourself, what is it going to take to get there?
Got it. And many people do not ask this in the fear of being pesky or annoying, because usually, they sell themselves short. They work hard and they hope that their manager would reward him with the promotion. And they're it's actually also very cultural, and not many people go out of their way and bring it up to their bosses. And then there are some people who always bring it up to their bosses. Um, what is the right approach to ensure that you are on that fast track and you are acting faster than others?
Well, I think it starts with you, like I mentioned before. If you have the right mindset, you will want to do more. Um, I think, for me, most of the time when I wanted a promotion or when I wanted to move forward, I just started doing the work I'll be expected to do, as I explained before. But there's actually a different way to do that. If you are close enough to your manager, if you have a good relationship, you can have an honest conversation with them way ahead of time and tell them, hey, this is my career ambition. This is where I want to be in a year's time. What do I need to do to get there? And if you have a good relationship with your manager, they'll save you a ton of time. They will tell you exactly what you need to do. Not only that, they will be aware that you need opportunities, so they will be able to provide it for you. Just to give you an example, when I was the VP of marketing at Kolu, I had an employee. She was the head of customer support. And she told me early on, a couple of months into the role, her dream is to be a manager. She really wants to grow a team. Now, at the time, I didn't have the resources. We couldn't afford to hire more people. But what I did instead is I made her responsible for all of our vendor relationships. So instead of me handling a lot of the conversations, negotiations, I let her do that. And this was the first step towards getting some leadership experience. A couple of months later, we had a few interns reaching out and asking if we have any internships available. We actually didn't. But when I heard that they reached out, I told our VP of HR, you know what? I actually want one intern. I want them to support our head of customer support so that she has an experience working with a more junior employee. And it was just part-time, and they did it for almost 6 months. And after 6 months, guess what? We could actually afford to hire that intern. And she officially became a manager. But throughout that year, and it took a year to get there, she already started gaining the experience she needed because she confided in me and told me that was her dream. And I was able to help her. So when you have a good relationship with your manager, by all means, tell them exactly what you want and ask them what you need to do to get there.
Got it. So what you're saying is, of course, work hard, bring impact, contribute, but do not shy away from having these conversations and making it clear. Otherwise, somebody else who might not have contributed as much as you, and but has initiated the conversation more than you, might bag the price, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, hard work is not enough. Maybe you're doing great work, but not in the right direction. So if you wanted to be a leader, but you did a lot of work on things that are more geared toward individual contribution, that's not going to make you a better leader.
Mm.
So more work or hard work is not necessarily the right answer. Sometimes you just need more work in the right direction to gain the right skills. And if you can have that conversation, great. I know that not everyone feels this comfortable with their manager. I know some managers don't really enjoy the conversation because they think their employees are coming after their job, which is ridiculous. As a manager, if your employees are growing and succeeding, that's a testament that you're a great leader. So you shouldn't be afraid of it. So if you can't have that conversation, do what I said before. Figure out what it takes to get to your dream job, to that promotion, whatever it is you want to do, and find opportunities around you or create them. And if you can't get your manager involved, then you'll have to do it without them.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you so much. The other thing is about tooting your own horn, because there are so many employees who think, say, advertising about their contribution is something that they're not very comfortable at. They think that if they have worked hard, it would be visible to them. How do you think about self promotion within an organization, about the work that you have put in, especially in context where there are 360-degree feedback, right? So
Yeah.
people usually measure your contribution or your impact to the organization, taking feedback from all the people that you have worked with closely. So maybe some guidance on that, those lines would be helpful as well.
Yeah, I guess I don't like waiting for feedback, and there's a very fine line between bragging and actually making sure that people know about the work that you're doing. And here's the thing, if you work for a company that has more than 10 people, and especially now, before, if you had 10 people, you all sat in the same room, they knew exactly what you were doing.
Right.
But when you work for a big organization, when there's not much visibility, you have to talk about your achievements, but you have to make sure that you do it in a way that doesn't sound like you're just bragging. And you have to deliver real results, not fluff metrics. So a lot of people fall into that trap of manipulating the numbers and just showing success when you're not actually successful.
Right.
That's the worst thing you can do. And in order to kind of demonstrate your achievements without making it look like bragging, one, you need to have real results. You need to be humble. Don't claim all, the credit for it. Thank the people who were involved. Make sure that, you appreciate them in public. And don't do it every other day. Do it only when you have like significant achievements. And do it as in a way where you thank everyone else. You're not just sending an email saying, "Hey, I'm awesome. Take a look at me."
Right. So, is it? Would you advise listing out your contributions, say in the last quarter or so, and sending it out to your boss or something of that sort, so that it is documented and he knows exactly? Because sometimes, even if you're talking with him every week, he might not know what your exact contribution is.
Yeah, I don't think you need to wait for an opportunity to do that. I think if you have a good relationship with your manager, then you establish a means of communications where, some companies work with a software to do that. So it's very easy to kind of see all the projects and how they actually how the results were delivered. Some companies don't have that. For me, what I would usually do, I would create a shared document and make sure that I have all the updates there. So my manager can go in there, look at it whenever they want. Now, having said that, managers don't always remember to go and check. So you definitely need to bring up some of your successes. I think doing it quarterly is, waiting way too long. You can maybe do a roundup once a month.
Right.
And you shouldn't try and squeeze as much information into it as possible. You should only pick one or two things that are actually meaningful and that in a way they actually support your manager's goals, not just your own,
I see.
and focus on those. Because what happens with most people, especially if they have like a specific deadline, like every 2 weeks you need to send an update, they force themselves to find things to report on, and they end up sharing like the dumbest things that have absolutely no meaning just because they want to show that they did something.
Got it.
So yeah, just focus on the things that actually matter.
Got it. Excellent. My next question is on, again, a very important one. And you said when you are 100% ready for a role, you are looking at the wrong opportunity. And this, I will tell you, this is a flaw and a flaw in a mindset. Say, for example, you are applying for a role and you look at the job description. If there are say 10 to 20% of the job description that you do not have experience for, you feel that you are not the right candidate and you don't even apply for it. And I have learned this the hard way. And then I spoke to a VP of my organization in the same podcast, and she had the same opinion. So can you just explain, when do you think you are ready for an opportunity and when you should back off if you're not ready for an opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny story. So I don't think I've ever been ready, 100% ready for a role when I stepped in. And I think for me, the way I look at it, I want to make sure that I continue to grow. Why move into a new role or why move up the ladder if you're not going to learn something new and you're going to, develop yourself and become a better version of yourself? And you can't do it if you're 100% qualified. So you always want to have that little stretch to get you out of your comfort zone, at least in my opinion. Now, there's obviously a fine line between, not knowing how to do 50% of the things and the 20% of the things. And here's how I look at it, right? If I wanted to be the CMO of Microsoft tomorrow, I probably can do it. I've been a CMO before, but not of a company the size of Microsoft. So that would be a little bit insane. So that's very easy for me to look at and say, hell no, this is not for me. There are roles where you look at them and it's like, been there, done that. That's not for you because it's too obvious. And you're looking for that nice sweet spot in the middle where you know how to do the most important aspects of the role, and you have some room for growth with requirements that are not going to make or break that role.
Right.
That's at least the way I try to look at it.
Got it. Thank you. That was very helpful. I'm being mindful of the time here. Just last question to end this up. You talk about growth mindset. Growth mindset is something that I am a big fan of, and it actually relieved me of the weight that I always carried, and I always had this fixed mindset. But when I read the book, Carol Dweck's book, it felt like, wow, I can grow in whatever I want. However, there's the opposite concept, which is the Peters principle, and it says that you rise to the level of your incompetence. Okay, because you grow, you have been a great individual contributor, and then you are rewarded with a manager, but you never worked on being a manager, and then you get stuck because that is the level of your incompetence. So how do you reconcile these two aspects?
Yeah, I think sometimes you just have to step into something new and figure it out, because it's true, what got you here is not going to get you there.
Right.
And that makes perfect sense, but you can prepare for that. I mean, in most cases, you don't just become a manager from one day to another. It's something that you work towards. It's going to happen in the next couple of months. So you do have the opportunity to start thinking about it and preparing for that. And you can do that by talking to other leaders to learn from their experience. You can read books, as you mentioned, and you can start practicing. Like I mentioned before, find someone to mentor, find someone junior that you can help. If you have a great relationship with your manager, ask them to be part of some of their leadership meetings to learn what that actually looks like. And just ask for their advice. And I'm going to be very honest with you, not everyone is cut up for management. A lot of people get there just because it's time and it's the next step in seniority, but they shouldn't be leaders. It's just not for them. They don't have the right mindset to actually help others. And just a great tip, I think probably the best book I've ever read about leadership is Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Not only from an inspirational point of view on how to treat your employees, but she also gives you very specific guidance on what to do. Like, how often should you have one-on-ones? How should you run your one-on-ones? What should you think about? So if you want to, there's nothing like experience, but if you want to prepare for it, start reading, start asking questions. So when you get to that point, you're not starting from scratch.
Correct. Well, this brings us to the end of an insightful conversation with Maya, and I think we barely have scraped the surface of the book, maybe just 5% or so. There is still a ton of information. As I said, this is going to be beside my shelf for a long time, and I'm going to, in fact, if I have a pencil already, and I usually never read a book without a pencil. I underline a lot of stuff here, and this book is close to my heart now. So yeah, please get yourself a book. This is a great gift for anybody who is starting a career, in the middle of the career, maybe at the peak of his career, because it validates a lot of things and just makes you ready on your career path. So Maya, thanks again for your time, for writing this book, first of all, to offering your book to the world, and again for your time on our podcast here.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Maya.